how important to you has your, do you think that you could be where you're at in business without your faith in God?
Absolutely not. No way. Not a chance. I talk about this a lot, but I never expected that my greatest testimony of all this would that my faith has increased exponentially since starting the business. I mean, when you think about it, which it's hard to understand until you're really in the boat, but it's one of the greatest pursuits that God kind of, I think, has bestowed upon some of his people, is the fact that you're reducing any control that you may have over your livelihood at that point. It's up to God to provide it and for you to be faithful to it.
All right, all right, all right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be when you are watching this or listening to this. If this is your first time here, this is the best damn podcast you're going to ever hear in your whole life. We are known as Old Guys Still Rock, or better yet, OGSR. I think we're in episode number 144 today, buddy. Is that right?
I believe so.
144, just by a start of a multi-conversation on phones 2 or 3 years ago, like, hey, we need to start putting this and recording this and send this out and seeing if we can help other people get better, because our conversations were helping each other get better. And that our conversations, meaning Brent and I, he's, as of my screen, is on your far left. We do have a special guest today. Kind of looks like me a little bit, but I don't know,
51%.
Kind of weird, 51%.
Yeah.
So anyway, as of the screen sits right now, again, I could be in the middle, I don't know, but as the screen looks now, on the very far left of the screen is the other host of the show, Brent Wright of Brent Wright Incorporated. Raise your hand, Brent. There he is. That's a guy. So Brent Wright of Brent Wright Incorporated, him and I have been great, great friends for over 30 years. Man with multiple different companies, from detail shops to payroll companies to body shops. He is the financier to one of the state-of-the-art fitness centers in Eugene. It's called the Wright Wellness Center. His wife is the boss. Yes, I said that. His wife is the boss. As I said, payroll companies. He also started with a venture capitalist group, and they bought a company about a year ago. I know it's a little bit less than that, maybe right around that time. It's called bustedtees.com. So if you love novelty t-shirts, stop right now. Just pause the button. Go look up bustedtees.com. Check it out. It's awesome. And they have some great social media pages, which we'll get into in a little bit. But a really cool thing about Brent Wright, the other host of the show, is he's a great, great business coach and a great personal coach. So if you're kind of stuck in a loop in life or business, go back and watch 143 episodes that we have on here. See if he's a fit for you. Super easy to get a hold of. If he's like, you know what, this is something I can look for. You can kind of get on that platform. If you're not in his state, get on a platform like this and you can start doing some coaching. But we're watching this episode today. Again, will be another enhancement of why you should probably look into him if you're, again, stuck in that loop. But in the middle of my screen, as of right now, there is a very, very big part of my life. My son, Christian Alexander Armstrong of Tier 1 Electric, and he is located in beautiful, beautiful Nampa, Idaho. So what's up, my dude? How are you?
Doing excellent, man. Not as good as you out in the 90 degrees in Southern California, but you know what? When it's 50 degrees in Idaho this time of year, we're celebrating too. So it's a good morning here. Sun's out, got a bluebird sky, so it's a good day.
Yeah. So the cool thing about this episode, man, is not only is he my son, but Brent and Christian have a history of way back in the day. Christian actually worked for Brent a while back in a different chapter of life, I guess you could say. So we'll get into that a little bit. We're going to have a great episode coming up there. But anyway, Brent, how are you? What's going on with you, man? How's the weather in Eugene, Oregon today?
Good. It's a balmy 31 degrees and foggy. So foggy that everybody was going like 10 miles an hour. And I thought about passing for a minute. And then sensibility kicked in. And thankfully, sensibility kicked in, because moments later, I saw somebody coming the other way, and I would have ran right smacked into the middle of them. So it's very, very foggy here.
Yeah.
We had over 5 inches of rain on Monday, and then it was 60 degrees yesterday and sunny.
Yeah, as you heard Christian say a little bit earlier, we're going to be a balmy 95 degrees, and it's still in February. It's just off the charts hot right now. A lot of us desert rats are like, this is way too soon, but we drop back down to the 60s tomorrow. But so anyway,
they actually closed the dam yesterday or the day before to hold the water because we just have not had any snowpack. We haven't had any rain. You know, I don't want to get into my tinfoil hat, but all the lines across the sky may have had something to do with it.
Dude,
Maybe.
Every time I'm on my walk and I'm looking up the sky, I'm like, that's just so weird how those two airplanes just made an X in the sky. Just so weird.
I heard something interesting yesterday that not only are they putting aluminum oxide, magnesium chlorate, a whole bunch of other things, but they're actually putting testosterone blocking agents into that.
Yeah.
They're trying to turn us into gender neutral population.
Well, watching these shows that my wife likes to partake in on Bravo, I could absolutely imagine that it's taking really good effect because there's some not alpha males on that show. And every other word is like, I have these feelings like, I'm like, dude.
The Real House Husbands of Palm Desert.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot about this. So guys, I want to get into this because it's a really good topic. So the other day I was listening to some stuff and been reading some stuff, and I want to talk about today's topic, which is we're going to call it the Pinata Effect. And we do have a list of topics and stuff like this. I'm really excited to get the insight of from Christian today. Christian is actually 35 years old. He's an entrepreneur. He is slugging it out right now. But he owns a company, as you can kind of see on his shirt right now, called Tier 1 Electric. And as I said, it's in Napa, Idaho, not Napa, California, Napa, Idaho. But man, how many employees do you have now?
We're actively at 5 now. We just we started late 2023, started with just me and my truck. It was one of those situations where I'd been running as a project manager on a $60 million project. And I kind of hit the peak of what I could do in the trade as far as being an employee. And, started to ask the question of, do I want to start a business, and went down the prospect of what it could do. But I also understood from working close under business owners, I saw the stress that they were under. I saw, most of them will say, don't do it, especially in contracting, don't do it.
Right.
Contracting is just it's cutthroat, and I saw it firsthand. And thankfully I never had to take that home. And so I always remember I was the guy that was like, I'm going to climb the ladder and I'm going to stay at that really comfortable spot at the top, and I'm going to go to work and do my job and make my benefits, and then I'm going to go home and have none of that baggage. But God had different plans, and it got to this point where I decided to take a shot late 2023, and I was like, I'm going to go take the contractor's license test. We'll see what happens. Out of 100 questions, I missed one. So I'm like, well, if that isn't somewhat of an indicator of what maybe this means, And so at that point, I'm thinking I'm going to start a business slowly. I'm going to see about, forming an LLC, getting something going. And I'm still managing the $60 million project in the process. And so I have my hands full, but, I'm not from here. I'm a native to Oregon. And so we moved here, what was it, late 2019, early 2020. And so coming here, it's not like I have a backbone of network of people like I would back in Oregon, to where I could lean on relationships and, lifelong connections to do that. And so that was worrisome. And so I got into it, and, somehow, some way, I got laid off from my job as that project was closing up. So I said, well, I have two options. I can go jump back in with the union, or get back on one of these big projects, or I can take this contractor's license I just got and try to make this work. So, prayed about it a bit and said, you know what, this is it. Let's hit the ground one and jump in the lake full suit. No, we're not gonna do this the easy way. And so from there, it started just me in a truck. I was able to make the right connections, and as we go into year 3 now, I've got 5 full-time guys, and we'll probably be hiring number 6 and 7 within the next 3 or 4 months.
That's amazing, man. It's a great feat.
Yeah.
So just again, want to get back on this topic, and it's going to kind of spill into everything that you just said. So the pinata effect. So typically when you get a pinata, right, you get up there, get blindfolded, got this stick, they turn you around a couple times, and you kind of swing at it. And a couple times you're miss, or maybe you hit it, but you get like 3 or 4 swings, and then that's kind of it. You know, what we're really going to dwell in today in a nutshell is it's like, even the pinata, you may miss a couple times, or you may hit it and nothing comes out of it. You've got to keep hitting it. You got to keep hitting it. You got to keep hitting it. So it's kind of the same thing that you said, Christian. It's like, you kind of like, hey, you know what? I kind of like being this employee type of stuff, but you've kind of felt that glass ceiling, right? You're still hitting, and like, I'm just going to be the best employee that I can possibly, and it's going to be well. And you kept hitting it. And even though that it didn't break, what did happen is that maybe the pinata fell off the string, and like, okay, well, now I have nothing to hit, right? And it got so being laid off, and how that spurred you to basically take that pinata back up, tie it on the string, but instead of hitting somebody else's pinata to get them their money or whatever that boss of yours was looking for, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to make a tier one pinata, and I'm going to keep banging on that thing. And then I'm going to get a couple other guys, and they're going to help me bang on it. And we're going to keep banging on it. Sometimes a little candy falls out, but sometimes nothing falls out. So, Brent, Brent, how many employees do you have at your body shop and your detail shop right now?
We run between 6 and 11 typically. We've been as high as 27. But this industry's changed drastically over the last 5 years. COVID was very good for us in a lot of ways, and very bad for us in a lot of ways. It's shaped the insurance industry, so they've kicked in a bunch of AI. And quite frankly, the lack of experience in our industry is really the problem, not just from a tech standpoint, but from the people that are evaluating what it is they're willing to pay for. So I'll give you, for instance, on my personal rig, during the last windstorm, I had a tree fall on my truck, and this is a $120,000 truck. We wrote a $52,000 estimate. The insurance company sent us over an AI estimate for 10 grand. And so, there's no fruit there. There's no candy on that pinata. And so we keep whacking at that pinata. And right now we're in a scenario where they've approved 17,000 of that 52, and they just washed their hands of it and walked away and said, file a claim against us. Let's go to war.
Right. Yeah.
And they're calling for war instead of doing their job. And so our industry's changed drastically. So in that, cycle times are through the roof. Our average cycle time is like 48 days. It used to be 3.6.
Yeah.
So we get a job like that in, and that job would typically take about 13 to 14 days. Smaller jobs would take 1 day. Now it's 48 days on a simple $3,000 fender job. And so with that, we don't need as many people standing around. And so that's changed in that industry. In the detail industry, it's all physical. So we don't have a choice. Payroll is changing a little bit. We are different than your ADPs, Gustos, Paychecks, and things like that. So we actually offer customer service. Kind of an odd concept in today's world. You call and you actually get a live human being when you call the phone. And that's a little bit different. And so that industry's quite frankly, kind of taken off. The problem is that in 2023, we were averaging about 1,800 new clients a year that were forming new businesses. Christian can attest to this. He was probably one of those people. We were averaging about 16,000 new businesses in Oregon a month. That's down to like 160 a month. So we're at 1% growth in Oregon with new businesses. And we all know this statistic, over 50% of new businesses fail in the first 5 years.
Right.
And have cash flow issues and on and on and on. In fact, if you want a good nugget, Christian, read this book.
I've read that. It is good. It is good.
Yeah.
So Christian, obviously Brent's been in business for a long time. You've actually been in business, but this is really your baby. You're hatching this baby over the last couple of years. What are you finding? What did you see as an employee that you're like, you know what, when I become an entrepreneur, when I start this business, how am I going to invest into my employees? What are some of the things that you took as a learning experience from being an employee to an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think one of the things it's unique in, I think my generation, millennials, which I used to really hate being identified as a millennial because a lot of times, like I identify us as like we're the beginning of the participation trophy
Right.
generation,
Right.
and as time has gone on, what I've realized is it wasn't necessarily the fault of anyone. We kind of were born from a time that didn't have any hard times. The 90s and the late 80s and 90s were beautiful. There wasn't much conflict. We lived the American dream. And I think a lot of people reminisce of the 80s and 90s as just being this pinnacle of life where things were a little, they were a lot more simple in context of now where we're at. And so we got to see that aspect of life and we're raised in that from childhood. But, we also were the streetlight kids. We didn't have, our cell phones didn't have FaceTime and social media was on dial-up internet. And we got to see the birth of all that. And a lot of that has translated into the reality of where we're at now because what I find is I'm stuck between, the older generation and their span of time that it took to go from one extreme to another was very short, so
Yeah.
that even though our age difference is only about 20 years. The crazy part is the difference between mine and your age separation as far as like culturally, the way that we
Right.
view the world is so drastically different from how it is for me and Dominic, who are 18 years apart.
Right.
He has no way of fathoming what life looked like before this. I
Right.
do. So you and I are able to connect on ways where we
Right.
understand culturally the disciplines, the ethics,
Mhm.
as far as you look at, and this ties into business and how we view the world as a whole. So I would say like in the trade specifically, like I came up in the trades coming out of the military with that old school, which people don't understand what that even looks like anymore. It's gone.
Right.
And when I came into the trade, it was 2013 and
All right. Yeah.
and it was all, the median age. I remember what sold me on it is when I got out of the military, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no transferable skill, I had no technical skill. And so I went to college, got my associate's degree for criminal justice. I thought I was going to be a cop, decided, no, I absolutely don't want to do that because this is why I just got out of the military and started looking at trade schools. That wasn't really talked about when I was in high school. And so when I did, I remember the first thing he told me, he goes, it's a great opportunity, especially as a veteran, you get some perks in as far as doing that. But the thing that sold me was the median age at that time in 2013 was 57 years old, which says demand is going to go up
Wow. Yeah.
and technology is only getting more and more advanced, which we've seen at a rapid pace. So I jumped in and was like, I'll learn something new. It's been a great trade. It requires, it's not just the technical side. It is still labor, still hard labor. You're still doing, digging ditches, getting in the trench, still having to use heavy equipment. It's a full aspect trade, which I love. The problem is that now, especially for me as an employer, what I see when I do these hiring pools for the guys that just have been in the trade for 5 years or less, they cannot bridge that gap. They see electricians as being one of the top paid trades. And so they go, oh, I want all that money. Oh, I want to do this. And I feel like their concept, and I have to start asking this question, what is it that you think we do? I have to ask that question, which is kind of crazy. But I have had to ask that because I've hired multiple guys where we're up on scaffolding, we're up on a boom lift for 30 feet in the air, and they're going, I'm scared of heights. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell either. I mean, we've all been in positions like that, dude. But like,
Right.
I'm gonna tell you, like, I'm not forcing you to be here. Like, if you want to go, and I've had guys quit because they're scared of heights. I've had guys quit because they got too tired crawling in a crawl space. I've had to fire guys because they took 6 hours to dig a 20-foot trench. And it's one of those things where I'm like, digging a trench doesn't take any technical skill at all. It takes
Right.
no knowledge of anything. Operating a shovel is the most basic thing you could do. It's not even splitting firewood. It's so simple that all you have to do is dig. The problem is that when I came into the trade, the benefit of having it more simple was that you would focus on fundamentals. And now all people see is the glamour of technology, pay,
Yeah.
freedom to do what they want. And I understand the perks of that, but they're skipping over the foundation of like, you still have to have grit, you have to have discipline, you need to be willing to show up when you're asked to show up. And the thing that I think is the biggest determining factor in who I hire now, it's all character based. I can teach you all the technical stuff in the world. If you
Right.
don't have those things, you're not going to fit.
So Brett and I have talked about this a ton, and it's really what's your bloodline is this at the podcast that comes to line of how you're training this stuff is like your mom and I got divorced a while back. She married a great guy, Brian, but you've always had this great kind of foundation around you. And Brett and I talk about this a lot is that foundation is seen as dissipated. You just mentioned that a little bit ago. It's kind of this Me Too stuff, less work as possible. Oh, I see that electrician on Facebook can make this much money. It looks really easy. All I have to do is connect a couple wires and it's good, right? So you kind of get away from that. So going back to the Pinata Effect, and Brent, this is going to be a question to you after Christian answers this, is how are you training your guys right now that, yeah, we're going to be digging some ditches. Again, I want us to put the image back. I'm still hitting that pinata. And that pinata may not break for 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, or maybe, for a longer duration of time. How are you instilling what you grew up with, Christian? And then the question to you, Brent, after he's done, how are you instilling that into your guys right now that may come in wide-eyed thinking this is going to be the best thing in the whole world? Is what I watched, like, this isn't it. And I appreciate your gumption, but we really have to start. Here's your foundation, and we're going to, over the next couple of years, we're going to build you to be better than me.
I'm pretty simple, and I guess now this would be considered old school, but I throw them straight to the fire. It's one of those things where brand new guy's a different story. If you're brand new, you've never done this, unfortunately, you're gonna have to hold a pocket for a bit. But it's the simple things that you still can show up early and start cleaning the van out. That doesn't take any technical knowledge. You can still sweep the shop, get here before everyone else and do that. You can be the first one here and the last one out. They're simple things that are principle based, they're character based, they don't require any skill. But when it comes to, like, as far as the guys with even a minimal amount of experience, I do expect to see a drive. It's going to come down to who's the guy that's actually taking the initiative to learn more. Who's the guy that's saying, hey, I'm willing to go check on this job if you need me to. Who's the guy that's saying, hey, don't worry about it, I'll go take care of it, let these guys get on to the next job, I'll handle it. That's the stuff where it says I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to make a mistake. And when you talk about a pinata effect, I think the one thing with pinatas as a whole, and I can think about this back to parties as a kid, I think the greatest thing that makes pinatas kind of the dichotomy is, like, is there's fun, there's a reward, but you look like an idiot if you swing really hard and you miss. And so you either
Right.
fall or you hit someone else or whatever, and so, like, the reality is most of us are just going to, people just do taps. And so they try to kind of feel for it and tap because it's safe. They're not going to look stupid if they're just, tapping. But you swing on that thing as hard as you can, you're going to fall and you're going to miss and you're going to look stupid. And so there is a risk to it, but that's what I see. And the guys I have now is this, it's taken time to build this team, but these are guys they're young and they are a rare breed for the generation. But I also think that desire of knowing something, being valuable, men are made to be that way. And I think that's the thing is these young guys, I've always, I've grown into my age now where I'm like, man, these young guys don't know how to work. The truth is culture is teaching them that, and they're learning that through what's around them, like you said. But there are plenty of young men out there that are saying, I know I'm built for more than this. Like, I'm not going to settle for that. And these guys that I've got do that. They're willing to. I called yesterday. We had a job where we were doing a 400 amp service out in a rural county area, and we couldn't get our inspection. And so my guys, I told them, I said, hey, we need to make sure they have power. I said, don't worry, we already got the generator out here running. They'll have power for the night. They thought ahead. They didn't need to ask me for a solution. They found a way. They took care of the person. They're back there this morning waiting for them to hook up to make sure that the customer felt like they were being taken care of. That's stuff you can't teach. Like, that is foundational to, like, any doesn't matter what you're doing, what profession you're in, what kind of work you're doing, whether you're a student. And so I think when it comes to that effect, you teach it by, I mean, what is their metal? What are they made of? Because I think it's a heart condition. You can't teach heart. And that's the thing that I always look at when I hire now. And when I'm looking at, I love bringing up these young guys because I'm big on, we can't gatekeep the trade. There is an abundance of way too many guys. I think, like Brent was just saying, unqualified, undereducated, lack of discipline. They haven't been willing to go do the hard stuff. And unfortunately, that's what it takes. You have to know how to do hard stuff. And if you don't, I mean, you can do bare minimum, but we all know what bare minimum gets you. So that's where, for me, I like seeing these young guys try. And I'm the first dude that says, hey, I don't want you to worry about failing. I just want you to worry about not giving 100%. And so for them, I told them, I said, don't worry about making a mistake. Just worry about not giving 100% because it's not going to cut it. And it's not going to cut it for your family. It's not going to cut it here. It's not going to cut it anywhere. And so if you're going to have any place to make a mistake, let it be here because we're all going to support each other regardless.
Hey, Brent, man, you know this cat for a long time, man. How awesome is that to hear that wisdom? I mean, you've known Christian since he's 14 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just hearing that, man, it's so awesome to hear. But again, I'm gonna let you take this channel, man, because you've known him back when he was 14. And he was kind of learning the ropes, and he kind of effed up a couple times with you.
Yeah.
So and there was some teaching moments with you, dude. That is basically everything that he just said. There are some golden nuggets that you gave him back at 14 that led to that, just what he just said right there.
One of the biggest ones that comes to mind is the bridge building opportunity. And it's cool to see this bridge completely built. You know, the bridge is never done. Christian could probably attest to that. He's still building that bridge every day. But that minor bridge that was built when I terminated you, when I fired you, sitting on the dryer, that was an eye-opening moment. I literally watched your eyes open, not just because you were sleeping, but literally and figuratively, like your soul opened up and you got it at that point. You stopped thinking that you were going to hit that pinata once and all the candy was going to fall out, that you had to keep whacking at it and you had to keep whacking at it. It was probably one of the best things that anybody ever did for you. To see this, to see you as a godly man, to see you as a father, to see you as a gatekeeper for your business is rewarding, 100% rewarding. I want to say hats off to you. Most people wouldn't stop whacking. Most people would say, no candy, I'm going to go find a new pinata. And you didn't.
Yeah. You know, and Brent, is just how, even at that moment, I mean, we try to remember everything and you have some visuals in your mind. There's two things that come out of that. First of all, what you just said is that, you know, what at that moment was a life learning lesson. He realized, like, okay, I can't just glide along in life. You know, I have a good life, but I can't glide along. I'm going to have to go out further and do some different things to make my life better. And I basically have to rely on myself. But and then for you, Brent, of looking at that going, I don't know what this kid's going to do, blah, blah, blah. And here it is, that what we talk about all the time, that ripple effect that you sometimes never see. Now you get to see the fruits of your labor of that moment here. There's other things that came into his life. But Christian, what was, going back to even that moment, you said this too, is when you're trying to hit that pinata and you swing and you miss and you fall down and you feel like an idiot, or, you look back and like, see, I knew he couldn't do it. I knew he couldn't do it. When was that point? And maybe that was a point at, what was the name of that shop back then, Brent?
Better Body and Paint.
Better Body and Paint. So maybe was that the trigger, or was there something later on in the life that, like, I don't care about falling down and looking like an idiot anymore. I'm going to keep slugging at this thing, and I'm going to go back to Brent 21 years later and say, yeah, you messed up, man. You missed out on a good one.
No, I think that's a milestone moment in my life, which is funny because it technically was my first opportunity at employment. So it was one thing we talk about is that was the epitome of trial by fire. It wasn't just a, hey, here's a handout. And I think that's one of the things where my opportunities in life, like that opportunity, that experience of, you don't show up, you don't do, you're not, you don't meet the standards that have been set before you. You're not doing what you've been asked to do. You're not being accountable. Can't trust in you to take care of the things I've asked you to trust. Those are things that if you don't catch that early enough in life, they become kind of impregnated in the way that you treat everything. So you think that everyone's going to owe you something, that everyone's going to let stuff slide. And that's dangerous. And like, that's the one thing I noticed even in Dominic now at 17 is like, in ways I feel like I failed because but it's hard because it takes a village. Brent's not my dad. He's not someone that's in my home to control me. You could have done and I say this all the time. I had a great fundamental understanding through my home, but it does take a village. It does take going out and have an employer knock you upside the head and say, you need to get your stuff together, but it ain't going to be here. Good luck. And the problem is like, I think a lot of times we get scared to do that, but we don't realize that there is benefit to that those kinds of moments. What happened with that, the fact that I can remember it at 35 years old, it was a significant moment in my life. But it wasn't the first time. I had multiple times I got in trouble. I mean, I went down a hard road, which is why I ended up having a kid young. It's why I joined the military ultimately, is I ran out of ways I could go. It was either going to be prison, a grave, or the military. And it got to that point where I got sick of doing stuff the way I was doing it. It was ultimately what led me to Christ. But like, it all started with these foundational things of tangible life. Says there's rewards and there's consequences. And if you want the rewards, you're going to have to be willing to lose what you think is going to be comfortable. And that coincides with what I've learned as I've grown in my faith, is that if you want something, it's going to cost you something. If it doesn't cost you anything, you're living in a delusion. And so at this point with business, what I've realized is that you have to be willing to be scared. You have to be willing to be injured. You have to be willing to lose things that you think matter to you now. and not out of arrogance, but just because your faith is greater than what is perceived in front of you. And I think that's where developing those things from life circumstances, being willing to be told no. People, the number one question I get asked is, man, how have you been so successful in the first 2 years of business? My answer is honestly, I'm willing to be told no because I believe in what I'm doing and I'm willing to bet on myself. I know what I'm offering. I have confidence behind what I'm doing so that I don't have to question it. These dudes that want to, drive the bottom line down and say, hey, I'll do it for less. I'll do it for less. Good luck. Like Brent said, they're not going to be in business 3 years from now
Yeah.
because they aren't thinking about what it's going to take to get there. And so I think in these conditions that we talk about, comfort's priority, especially in America now, comfort and convenience is priority. And so when you can find the opportunities to do stuff that makes you uncomfortable, do stuff that challenges you, and be willing to be told no. It's not out of arrogance. It's doing so out of, I believe in what I'm doing and I know that I've invested the time and the energy to put myself into an uncomfortable situation. That's going to build up something in you that is starting to become very a rarity, I would say. And so I'm grateful for those opportunities. I'm grateful for the times I've been told no. I'm thankful for the times that I've been disciplined, because discipline ultimately is what creates the good things that we have and the good understandings and the good moral character. And so I think that is something that, and I daily look at it as a father all the time. I want that back from my kids. I want a teacher to tell my kid, knock it off, or you're going out in the hallway, or we're calling the principal and you're going home. They don't do it anymore. I mean, I was kind of the last age where we'd get smacked on the wrist with the yardstick ruler. And I'm like, nowadays you would do that, they'd be in jail. Like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
crazy. There's no more reinforcement of that mentality. You can kind of just do what you want. And there's no fear of repercussion. So I'm grateful for that. And I do think that, like I said, it is wild to think back that a ripe little 14-year-old Christian who is very much like Dominic is now, but thought he had it all figured out. It also gives me hope, though, that it's not the end. I looking back then, I was just as hard-headed as I am now, but didn't have a clue what I was doing. And so it does give me hope sometimes when I see stuff with my own kids. It's like, you know what, there's ways. You just got to allow them to scrape their knees up. You got to allow them to figure out that their way isn't the only way, and that you got to expose them to those things that challenge their idea and their comforts.
Yeah, I think is in the comment we've talked about Brent's son Lincoln a lot about time and what he's instilling him at such a young age, and I see a lot of and that's really what's your foundation, what's being instilled into you. But I mean, going back to even if your parents are disciplining you and like, hey, this is the way of life and stuff like that, sometimes it just doesn't hit home. Now, it may, with some kids, it may not be with some kids or whatever that may be. But sometimes the parents could say stuff, or, your foundation could say this stuff over and over and you're just not hearing it. But like Brent could come up to you, like say, hey, da da da. I'm like, God, my dad just said that just a little bit ago.
Mhm.
But that one hit home, right? So it's the same words, but from a different person, and that spurs some different things. And now is like, okay, I'm telling you to hit the pinata this way. It's like, God, he doesn't know anything. I'm just going to keep doing it my way. And then Brent comes up and said, dude, hit the pinata way. I was like, Dad just said that. Maybe I should do that. And then you hit the pinata and it eventually breaks down to it. But really, another big question too, and Brent and I talk about this a lot, of how important God is in our lives. And you talked about, you're instilling this stuff in guys. Like, you got to a certain point in business, and I could only do so much more, so I brought in another guy and another guy. How important to you do you think that you could be where you're at in business without your faith in God?
Absolutely not. No way. Not a chance. And I would actually say, I talk about this a lot, but I never expected that my greatest testimony of all this would that my faith has increased exponentially since starting the business. I mean, when you think about it, which it's hard to understand until you're really in the boat, but it's one of the greatest pursuits that God kind of, I think, has bestowed upon some of his people, is the fact that you're reducing any control that you may have over your livelihood at that point. It's up to God to provide it and for you to be faithful to it. And before, it's like I've taken for granted financial security, scheduling my time, and of course, when you look at it from the outside, it's like, oh, I get freedom. I get to make all these things. It's not about that. You work more than you would being employed. You work more, as far as mentally being taken, you're more mentally taxed, emotionally taxed. Like there's a greater cost. But what I've realized is that what God has been able to do with this in this time. And it takes me back very often, especially in this season, to First Kings, when he called Elijah away after he ran from Jezebel and Ahab. the fact that he was able to sustain him, not, for one, in the water, he was able to have ravens bring him food, and he was, essentially drinking creek water. And then he was brought to a widow who only had enough flour and oil for one more meal before she was going to essentially die with her child. The point was is that they had enough flour and oil to continue to keep them alive. It wasn't an abundance. It wasn't, enough to make them rich and to fatten them up, but it was enough to keep them alive. And I realized that that is business in a nutshell. It's showing up. It's, when you see the bank account at $300 and $50,000 within the same week. And if you're so hyper focused on like this, the variables, you just get caught up in this thing of, well, you can control what you can control, for one. But two, I really did. I devoted this business. I remember on day zero, as soon as I realized this was a thing, I said a pretty hefty prayer, and I just said, God, if this is from you, it's for you. And so I prayed that everything that comes in through this business, that's for this business, that is created from it, through it, that it would all be a testimony and to glorify him, really, because it was more so, it's not just the clients that we serve or the partners we work with, but even the wholesale guys, the distributors we work with, the guys that we come across, randomly in a project. It's a matter of how can this be used to advance the kingdom of God. And it's not always this hyper spiritual thing. Sometimes it's just showing up when no one else will. Sometimes it's answering the phone when everyone else says, no, this doesn't make me enough money. And that catches people by surprise a lot, because, we have developed ourselves into this position of being a bigger contractor, and often hear, oh, that's probably too small for you. Dude, I'll still go do a job for free. You have my goal isn't to get rich, it's to serve people, it's to build something that's greater than money, and it's greater than having this stuff. And so when you tell me that you've got an older woman that has, she doesn't have a husband and she's got lights out, you think I'm going to charge her to go put a new light fixture in, to go change her lights, or to go repair a switch or an electrical hazard in her home? That's crazy. Like, and to me, that's where faith has to be about. It's not about what you can control, but what you started for in the first place. Are you there to serve, or are you there to get rich? And of course there is wealth that can come from it, but the wealth more so comes from the abundance you get out of the purpose that you're getting, and fulfilling a major task that God's given you in life. And for me, that is, I get to be an example to not only my family, but I get to provide for 5 other families. I get to, support a guy that is, I support a guy that had twins. I've got a guy right now, his daughter was sick for the first year. You're a special person in a lot of these people's lives, and it's not like you're looking for your flowers, but you are now a disciple to them in a lot of ways, and how you show up for them, how you don't rely on them just to make you money, but how you're developing them in their lives. How are you making them a better husband? Are you making them a better father? Because I know firsthand, being in the trades, I've been the dude that goes home ticked off at the end of the day because I'm a number. And
Mhm.
so I appreciate the aspect of investing in people. And the only way that I can do that is walking with God rightly in my own life. And it's the same way at home. Can't be a great husband or a great father if, all I'm worried about is what's happening in my life. But my life was created to be sacrificial. It's not my own. My money's not mine. My breast's not mine. My faith's not even mine. I can't take credit for anything good I have. And so I think the business has really been able to draw that down to the most simple factors of nothing you have that's good from you, or it's not from you or for you. It really is it's to glorify God. And I think that's the way that it's been a foundational perspective for me in business as I've continued to grow, because it is scary. There's not a day that I don't wake up and go, oh boy, what pinata are we swinging at today? Because I don't have one, I got 30 around me, and all of them are moving at a rapid pace, but there's a couple big ones I want to hit them, but I got to make sure that I'm ready to take a swing on that thing, because if I don't hit that one and I do fall, I'm going to miss out on the 6 other ones around me. And so it is a matter of, the walking by faith, not by sight. So there's a lot of discernment that comes into play, but there also is, are you willing to do the things that may look stupid? Are you willing to be told no? Are you willing to take a chance? And I don't like gambling. I'm not a gambler at all, but business is pretty much 99% gambling.
So, Brent, as a business coach, when you hear everything he just said, and by the way, guys, I would go ahead and rewind that about 10 times. There's so much good stuff in there. But, Brent, as a business coach, and you've helped a lot of great business people out in your life, when you hear that, is that something that you're using in your business coaching? Like, do you bring up how faith is important into, uh, getting your career to the next level, or raising your standard to the next level?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me that's been a game changer, and you said it so succinctly, Christian, is the gift of surrender. You have to be able to surrender all the things that you want for the good of the group. You have to be able to surrender all those things. And the one true fact is that we, as everybody on this podcast, can attest to is that someone else made the perfect sacrifice for us. And we'll never hit that mark. None of us can, but we can try every day, and we can push as hard as we can while we're here to glorify every situation that we do. So that way we are in perfect surrender while we're on this earth. Two things that really hit home for me is one, how much of a proud dad moment are you in right now?
This is awesome, man.
Right? I mean, to hear
This is
this,
awesome.
and you didn't teach this to him is the
No.
funny part.
No.
You lived a very superficial life
Yep.
in the past. And
Absolutely.
he learned from your swings at the Pinata, right?
Yep.
And then you've learned from him. Now, I'd be willing to bet you that the teaching moments that you gave him have magnified 100 times in him teaching you.
Yeah, I would say really, Leslie, over the last 6 months to a year, the conversations that Christian and I have had has been mind-blowing. I mean, because, I'll just kind of reach out and I really let him just spew, right? He's got a lot of stuff on his plate. He's raising a family. He's got to take care of, as you said, 5 guys. And you're just like, hey, man, how are you? And I just let him go. And in that time that I let him go and just go, just get everything off, right? This is massive release, which we've talked about. A lot of times guys live in a silo and they just keep everything bottled up. And by God's grace, it's like when we get on the phone and just really cut it up, we'll probably spend 30 to 45 minutes of him just like unleashing. And in that time is what you just said, Brent. In that time there's so many golden nuggets that he's given me that trigger like, holy crap, I should have done this, this, and this, and this. And so is it awesome? Yes, but it's also a very weird sense, a weird part to it.
Humbling.
It's humbling because you have this creation of basically that God created it, but with the union of his mom and I back when we were just super young, and what this great gift. I mean, really, at the ultimate gift, anybody that has kids, it's the ultimate gift that you can get from God. There's just nothing better than that. And that's including grandkids as well. But just to hear this wisdom, like when I was walking into the podcast room today, and like, who's your podcast on? What's your podcast on? We're going to be talking about the Pinata Effect. And I said, but the coolest thing that's going to happen today is that my son's going to be on it. And based on our past conversations, the wisdom that's going to come out of this is just awesome. But again, it's what you said too, Brent. It's been from you. It's been from me. It's been from Brian, his other dad. I don't want to call Brian the stepdad. He's another dad. He's been a massive player in this game, and his mom, who's amazing, which is weird to hear from like divorced parents that our relationship. And I think that's probably Christian, and maybe you can attest to this. I think that's been a big part of this transition, because typically in a divorce world, here's Blair being transparent, right? But in a divorce world, typically the parents don't get along very well. And to the point of, I will always be talking about swinging a pinata. I can remember the thing we were up on Dexter Lake, dude. It was with you, Brock, Erica, and Taylor was just a baby. And we went up there, and I was just like, God, I'm going out with my ex-wife's husband. We're going to go on this boat. This is super weird, da-da-da-da. And you guys got out of the car. So, Brian, if you're watching this, you'll probably remember this moment. But so I'm getting out of the car. I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with this. I got to, we got to be, we're going to be this kind of family, but I really don't have to like it. And he pulled my arm back and he goes, dude, I just want you to know, because I come from the same thing. Brian was divorced and stuff. And he goes, I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to enhance you. Mm. And I was like, freaking, it's a cool moment.
Yeah. One of the coolest, Chris, while you're getting yourself composed.
But anyways, no, I just said that, but I'm so proud of that moment, because you get to see, you get to see the fruits of that labor. And talking about swinging that pinata, and you fuck up a couple times and you do some stuff and it doesn't work out, but you just keep swinging and keep swinging. And I think two Christians said this as well, is that it's okay to fail, mm-hmm. but keep swinging. Don't give up. Keep swinging. We talk about, family too. You could say this in golf. You may have a bad shot, but just keep swinging. Keep swinging. Sooner or later, it's going to get better. But at the end of the day is, I think the big thing for us, going back to recap all that moment, is how that we had multiple players in banging this pinata, Christian being the image of the pinata night, banging on him, you know, do this, do this, do this, do this. And he may have not liked getting banged on, but now what happens is that as this visual, he's been banged on and formed and all this stuff. And now all of this fruit and all this candy is coming out of him. The cool thing about it is the guys that are around him now are picking up the candy and they're going to become the pinata. And Christian's going to bang on him and bang on him and bang on him. And it's a couple of years. And eventually their pinata is going to break and there's going to be guys below them. So the ripple effect on just this, not only you, Brent, but also with Brian and my ex-wife, Stacy, and so many other people involved in Christian's life that made this great. But now that the candy's starting to come out of Christian's pinata and how is what he said is how it's enhancing everybody else's life. So massively proud dad moment. It just kind of a proud human moment as well. So
yeah,
anyway.
The second one was, and this is probably a less eventful moment. You may or may not remember this, Christian, but as soon as you signed up for the military, you actually came by my shop and you said, I'm having a baby. I'm joining the military. I'm going to go make something of my life. And I'm going to show you what I can make of myself. And you shook my hand and you went off. And that to me was the first piece of candy that fell out of the pinata. You made a decision that you weren't going to let the past hold you back any longer. You were looking to the future. You were going to make something of yourself and nobody was going to get in your way. And you were just going to keep swinging. And I remember that moment almost more than I remember the dryer moment, because that was impactful to me. The fact that that you had the wherewithal, the ego in a good way to come back and actually thank me for that prior moment. That's happened twice in my life.
I think there's, and I think the easiest example to always use is like, we talk about, especially as young men, high school football coach, wrestling coach. A lot of young men say they attribute a lot of their success to those men because, as you said, that was the community figure for them. That was the guy that their dad said a lot of good things. They had a great father figure, or maybe not, but that coach was a guy that chose to show up. He selectively took time to pour into that person individually that saw failures and said, I'm not giving up. You're going to keep showing up and I'm going to push you. I don't care if you hate me or not. I'm going to keep holding you accountable. You are going to meet me here earlier than the rest of the team. You're going to stay here later than the rest of the team. You're going to come in and do extra workouts during the week. You're going to come in, there is this level of, you can either look at it as I'm being picked on or I'm being singled out, or, hey, this dude really believes in me. He's pouring extra into me. He's going out of his way to do more for me. And when you use the example of my life, I was fortunate enough to have multiple figures of people that lived sacrificially for me, and that in itself is a blessing, but I've been given the opportunity and the grace to fail. That's the other thing is like, I've been allowed to be messy, and I have always been, I've always had an aversion to any sort of being told, to think or feel a certain way. It was just, I'd march to the beat of my own drum. And the more you tried to tune it out, I was like, I was going to find a way, and the irony is I deal with that now with all 5 of my boys. And so, but I also have learned how to parent it through my own understanding of what that's like. I don't want to break your spirit. I don't want to keep you from figuring those things out, because it is going to require some scrapes on the knee, some injuries, some times of looking stupid, some times of trouble. And I think that concept of understanding first and foremost they're God's children before they're my own is one of the greatest releases from feeling like I'm responsible for anything that happens to them beyond what God is willing to allow them to endure. I can love them, guide them, support them, and protect them as much as I want, but ultimately in the end, the way that I love them, have faith in them, give grace to them, and try to walk as closely with Jesus as I can is the greatest thing I can do, because I think the greatest thing I've been able to do for my kids is being able to say, especially Dominic, because Dominic, as you said, he's grown up with me. He didn't grow up under me as an adult. I mean, I've had him at freshly 18, and so he's had to watch me grow. And as he sits in this place now at the same age I was when he was born, I'm like, I bring that up to him frequently, and I say, you've had to watch me climb out of the hole that I dug for myself, and I've had the strength to do so because God has been gracious to me. But I don't want that for you. But if it be His will, then I'll still stand with you in it. I will help you. I'm not gonna dig you out of the hole. but I will stand there and I'll wait, and I will continue to supply you with the tools and the help and knowledge I can. And so I think that there's a lot of fundamental strength in just recognizing that, and recognizing that you have to be willing to say, I screwed up. There has to be accountability, and there has to be the willingness to be willing to suffer to get better.
I think there's a little bit of part of what you just said, and I know that's the same thing that happens with Brent and Lincoln too. There's times in you're going to lick gutters or you're going to fail one of the two, but allowing them to marinate into that, that failure, allowing them to lick that gutter, still standing with them while they're licking with it, right? You're not totally abandoning them that, but you're like, hey, you got to taste this so you know what it feels like or what it tastes like. But you're going to have to pull yourself out to it. I'll help you once you start showing actions that you want to get out of it. But if you're going to marinate in this, I'll stay in the marinade with you. And then when you're ready to get out, then I'll help you get cleaned up and do stuff. But to do that stuff that you're doing with your kids right now, and then what you went through when you were younger, and then Brent with Lincoln, is to, as much as you want to put a Band-Aid on it, allowing them to do that is going to make them the men that not only that we need, but what we want. So it's just awesome to hear that say that to it. But Brent, have you experienced that too? I know that Lincoln does a lot of great stuff. I call him the savant of I think he's 9 years old.
Yeah,
10?
He's 9. He's just about 9. He's going to turn 10 this year at the end of the year.
Yeah, they're 10. So even though that he does a lot of cool things, from driving tractors to, helping cows and all these different things, there's obviously some times that he messes up, right?
Yeah. That's the one thing that my wife and I disagree on, is how to handle that. I'm the type of person that teaches based upon actions. And so Lincoln, like, he would come out to try and help me, and he'd stand there with his hands in his pockets, and I'd push him over, literally. And my wife's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, I've told him 100 times, if I've told him once, keep your hands out of your pockets, be prepared for anything. Life is not going to be easy on you. It's going to knock you down way more than I'm going to knock you down. I'm just knocking you down first, so that way life doesn't have to knock you down. And he's learning that. He's learning to be prepared. He's learning to look ahead. And I can definitely see in all of his actions, he writes down in his daily prayer journal. So my wife bought all of us this daily gratitude and prayer journal. And I have failed at this massively. I have like one page written. But he does it diligently every single day. And the one thing that he writes down every day in his book is, I pray that I can do better. I pray that I can become better. And my wife took that like, you're really hard on him. All he wants to do is make you happy. And he's really struggling with trying to make you happy. And I'm like, look, I have to guide him and coach him in a way that he understands that life isn't easy, and it's not going to allow him to make massive mistakes and not have to pick himself up. And so, again, we disagree on how I manage him. She's more of the coddler, and that's her role. And that's important too. So when I knock him down, he doesn't go run to mom anymore. When I knock him down, he gets back up, and he just looks at me and he's like, okay, I get it. And he knows that I'm knocking him down because I love him, and I'm guiding him spiritually and through Bible verses. And so we had a talk last night on the way home from Bible study. One of his friends said, your parents are very lenient on you. My dad whips me with a belt when I get in trouble. And I asked my kids, I said, would you rather I whip you with a belt, or would you rather I whip you mentally and spiritually with Bible verses, so that way you understand the basis of what I'm trying to tell you? They don't feel like I'm lenient on them, but at that moment, they felt like I was very lenient, but guiding them and coaching them in a way that will allow them to grow spiritually at the same time as physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I asked them, I said, would you prefer I beat you? No. Why? Well, because it hurts. I understand. But what hurts more, me whipping you or me showing you in a Bible verse what your actions caused you? They actually thought that me showing them a Bible verse was harder on them than me whipping them.
Just it's, again, there's just another golden nugget in there. Christian, I want to go back to you. You're talking about, the young guys that are starting. This is just a different way where your fruits of your stuff that's starting to happen from your pinata is starting to leak some fruit or some candy, whatever you want to call it. You have the guy cleaning out vans. When they're first starting, like, okay, you got to make sure all the supplies are in there. We got this ready, so when we pull up into a job, we're not like, oh gosh, we're missing 17 gauge. You only filled the 13 gauge and stuff like that. But making guys go through that, and how it probably, and maybe the guy will tell you that, but that your employee tell you that, it's like, I freaking hate doing this job. It's going to make me better, right? But you're really instilling in him. You're basically kind of being that father figure that, even though that he has one and he's probably older than you, that you're instilling in him what it's going to take to go ahead, and it's like, okay, here's your standard today, right? And your standard tomorrow is going to be here, and your standard tomorrow is going to be here because of this. Just cleaning a little truck and making sure the supplies are in there the right way is actually going to make it better. Do you have guys kind of like hesitate, like procrastinate getting the stuff done, or do they know once you ask them to do it to get right after it?
Yeah, the guys I have now, they have that it factor. They have the gumption to be able to step up without being asked. Very rarely do I have to say, hey, go clean the truck. Like, even the top guy, my lead supervisor, he knows, like, dude. I mean, and the irony is, to digress a little bit, my lead supervisor was a like brand new green first year apprentice under me when I first moved out here. And so the irony is that I developed him from brand new. We separated for a few years, and then when it came time for me to hire my first employee, he was the first guy I called. But it was because when I saw him as a first year apprentice, he was one of the very few guys that invested in going deeper with understanding what was involved in the processes, not just the trade itself, but why are we doing stuff this way? Why can we, if there's three different ways to do this, how can we do it this way? And that shows me a discipline and a willingness to invest not only in themselves but in the trade. And so, he's good about leading that way with the other guys, and that it's leading by example. And most, the irony is most guys that are the best leaders don't want to be leaders. I mean, you see that in scripture too. That was Moses in a nutshell. And I see that in the guys that I have now. Most of them are very meek. They're quiet country boys, most of them raised in small towns, but they have some of the hardest working. Their work ethic is abundant. They're respectful. I get positive feedback from everyone they encounter, which is hard because you send a 19 and a 21-year-old into a project, you're going, oh, most of the time you're going, man, they're going to act. No, they're not. They actually, I get my crew, my youngest crew right now is, I think he's 22 and a 19-year-old, and they have more positive 5-star feedback than any other person I've had employed so far. And it goes to show the professionalism, their willingness to shake someone's hand, to look them in the eyes when they're talking, like basic skills. And so, like, when you talk about cleaning out the van or grabbing a broom, the grab a broom mentality is old school, man. That's the thing is there, and that was the same way in the military. It's like it doesn't matter what rank you are. The first, you better be willing to grab a broom. You don't sit there and say, hey, I expect this to be done, without being willing to get in there and get it done yourself. And I mean, I've had a guy actually who's no longer with us anymore, but when he interviewed with me, I could tell, he said his what actually caused me to hire him is, he said, I've been in an office too long, my hands have gotten too soft.
Mhm.
And you could tell this guy his father had never taught him how to swing a hammer. He had never, he had never dug a trench. He had never done. And so these things were, the digging a trench thing was a moment for him. I ripped him. I said, there is zero reasons why that should have taken you that long, and I'm not going to pay you for the extra time it took for you to do it. And he kind of looked at me, and I said, do you think that you earned that wage rightfully? Do you think that you went in and fulfilled a basic duty, and that should have taken that long? Well, no. And I said, okay, so if you're paid by the hour and you do everything that way, then why would I keep you as an employee? And so it started to kind of register with him at that point. And the same thing, he would show up. He was a low guy on the totem pole, never the first guy to grab a broom. And so I remember by the time that he left, he had said something, and it was he had taken a different job, and I kind of known this was gonna happen. But it was the fact that he came to me and said, you've developed me so much, not as an electrician but as a man, as a father and a husband, because
Mm.
I didn't learn these things. And that to me means more than whatever you can be as an electrician. It's the matter of, I don't care what you do here at work. Work is work, dude. Like, what matters to me is that you are a solid man, solid human being. And that mentality of being willing to grab a broom, that mentality of, I'm not too good for any of this stuff. But seeing as, you know, the biggest motto that I share with these guys daily when we have our weekly meetings is how you do anything is how you do everything. The way that I
Yep.
hear it all the time when people say when we pull up with our vans, they're just like, "Oh gosh, you guys are legit." It's like, no, we just take care of our stuff. Yes, I did invest more money in having, higher quality vehicles. Yes, we got uniform ladder racks. Yes, we got everything set up in SOPs. Like, but those things, those are investments in how we serve people. Those aren't there to benefit us as much as they are to benefit the people we're taking care of. And so it's the same aspect. If you aren't willing to shower daily, or if you aren't willing to tie your shoes, to have a to keep your uniform clean, then how am I going to be trusted to go handle an electrical system in your business? Like, it just, the two and two don't go together. And so people don't realize that, but I tell the kids that same thing all the time. I'm like, dude, if you can't make your bed, and especially, once you get to that 12, that preteen age, you can't make your bed. If you show up to wrestling with your shoes untied, your coach already has, it doesn't matter what you do, you might be the best guy, but if you show up to class unprepared, if you show up to wrestling practice with your shoes unlaced, your headgear hanging off your head, he's instantly gonna think this dude isn't gonna freaking be worth nothing. So how you
Right.
present that is just like that mentality of being prepared, being willing to do whatever it takes. Those things, they transfer to every aspect of life. And so I think it is significant in how you train up young men, new employees. And I think just in general, you can weed out the people that really want it. Like, I'm willing to do, the steps necessary in order to get better.
Yeah, what Brent was talking about a little bit before with Lincoln, instead of beating it into him, using scripture to kind of head accountable in a roundabout way, that what you just said, and just in different form. There's scriptures. There's like, your stuff is faith based, and there's some scriptures that involve with those. Like, if you're expecting to, the trench story that you talked about, is that, hey, if it's taking you that long to build a trench, what's the point, right? And so it's just it's a
Well,
different form of
it's a
scripture
servant mindset,
mindset.
right?
Yeah. Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So on that, I don't know if you remember this, Christian, but the first day that you showed up, this is a proud mentor moment for me. But the first day that you showed up, you said, "Okay, I'm ready to detail. What do I do first?" Like, you go clean the bathroom. And you're like, "What?" And you're like, "What? Seriously? I got to go clean the bathroom?" So every one of our employees, their first day, they get to clean the bathroom. And it sets the tone for every
Yeah.
piece of everything. If they won't humble themselves and go clean someone else's toilet, then they're not a servant, and they're not going to have a servant mindset. And it's extremely humbling. And those folks that it's debilitating to are the people I don't want around me, because still to this day, 20 plus years of owning this business, I go clean the toilet, pull out the vacuum, I sweep the floors, I do all the things. I don't have somebody that cleans my office. I clean my own office because I want to lead the charge. I want people to understand that I have a servant mindset. I'm willing to wash the feet of those who are technically, use air quotes, guys, beneath me. And I want to serve them every day how I want them to serve others, not me. I want them to serve others that way. So going back to your story about showing up with everything prepared, that's part of that training. And unfortunately, we are, as business owners, training people in the basics because their families aren't training them the basics. School's not training them the basics. They're not going to church anymore. They're not going into the military. One of the most successful, and this is lightly political, but not really, but one of the most successful countries in this world, you have to go into the military for 3 years before you do anything. And I think that we need to change how we deliver this message to people.
I agree.
You have to be able to humble yourselves before you go out to serve, because if you don't, you're going to serve halfway.
Yeah, there's not enough books you can read. There's not enough podcasts you watch to develop that into you at all.
Nope.
So, boys, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to kind of start sealing this up. But, man, Christian, any final thoughts for you, my dude?
No, I will real quick, kind of double down on what Brent just said, because it's something I actually have been discussing frequently for the last year or so. But it's something that's modeled as we've developed this business, that people ask us, when they ask, well, what makes Tier 1 different than the 150 other contractors in this valley? A lot of people say it's more so the principles that we operate off of. It's the communication, it's our follow through, it's the professionalism, it's our ability to be able to think outside the box, and what that comes from, again, is being willing to try something new. But I think a lot of it is that You see a lot of contractors in our trade go, we do everything to code, we're licensed. And so what I translate that to people, it says, so what they just told you is that they do the absolute bare minimum.
Correct.
Those are all requirements to be legal. Those are not things that make you go above and beyond. Code is the bare minimum to keep things from catching on fire and from killing somebody. That's it. And so when somebody says they're code compliant, that just says that they do the absolute bare minimum possible and that that's their ceiling and that that's all they care about. And so I think that that's something that this business has tied into that philosophy, as well as showing the guys, I'm like, I don't care. The code book says that's the minimum, but how do we do it better? Because I don't care about doing the bare minimum. I don't ever want to do anything that way. I want it to be at least that, but my standard is much higher than that. And tier one, I mean, that it comes with the name. Tier one is the 1% of the 1%. It's doing stuff that, most people aren't willing to do. It's going above and beyond. It's serving people on a different level. It's willing to invest in the career. It's, being willing to send my supervisor to Vegas to go to a specialty training so that he can better serve people and teach our guys and me. And so I think, when you go back to kind of summarize the context of this whole thing, is that Pinata is going to transform, and there's going to be multiple that come across you, sometimes all at once. And I think the greatest thing you can do is, become like water. Know when it's time to tighten up and hit with force, and when it's time to soften up and kind of permeate through, whatever the obstacles are that come your way. And that the greatest way that you can do that is to put yourself in situations that allow you to struggle.
Brent, any final words from you, bud?
I think to summarize this from the Pinata Effect topic is to swing often, swing diligently, and swing with standards over feelings.
Wow, man, this is awesome. my day is just jacked. I don't have to do anything for the rest of the day. It's just been such having your best friend for almost 30 years and having your son of 35 years on the same episode. This day is not going to suck. It's going to be awesome. Just so many good teaching moments in here, guys. So again, this is episode number 144 for us. Go back and watch 143, the other 143 episodes. But the last couple of episodes that we've done, one with Caitlin, today with Christian, man, there's some good stuff in there. And if you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, get this out to your friends and family. There's teaching moments in these, guys. It's just not saying that we're better than anybody else. But what Christian said, he's leaving with the servant mindset. He's pouring into guys. He's pouring into people to help them get better. Brent's doing the same thing with his employees and his coaching. I'm doing the same thing in my world with building friendships with my clients and just really enhancing their life through real estate, whatever that may be. But the point of it is take these episodes, get them out, share this. We have enough of other BS that we can see on a daily basis through Instagram or big media. This is something to hear, is it brings us together as a community to help all of us, even these guys behind the camera and the mic, to help us get better. So again, hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button. But until we see each other next week, guys, stay safe. But most of all, God bless. Have a great, great day.